There is a wall in Italy that has been sitting in the ocean for over 2,000 years. Salt water hits it every single second of every single day. And instead of crumbling, it's getting stronger. Meanwhile, the parking garage built near your house 10 years ago, already cracking. Somewhere between then and now, humanity built something so good, we forgot how we did it. This is the story of the concrete that shouldn't exist, and the detectives who spent decades trying to steal its secret back. Let's start with the crime scene. Rome, over 2,000 years ago. The Romans are building ports, aqueducts, and domes, and they're doing it with something called opus caementicium, Roman concrete. Some of it is dumped directly into the sea to build harbors. Salt water is supposed to be concrete's worst enemy. It seeps in, breaks down the structure, and turns solid stone into crumbling dust within decades. Except that didn't happen. The Roman sea walls are still standing. Some are actually denser and tougher now than the day they were poured. Modern concrete? Give it 50 years near the ocean and it's falling apart. We've built bridges that need replacing after 75 years. The Romans built harbor walls that outlasted their entire empire and are still winning. So the question every engineer eventually asks is simple. What did they know that we don't? For centuries, the leading theory was almost insulting. Maybe the Romans just got lucky. Maybe it was cheap volcanic sand that happened to work. Maybe the recipe was an accident nobody could repeat on purpose. Case closed, right? Not quite. Because if it was an accident, it was the same accident repeated across an entire empire for hundreds of years on structures the Romans clearly intended to survive. That's not luck. That's a formula. Someone knew what they were doing. The problem? The actual written recipe was never fully preserved. Fragments exist in old texts, but the exact process, the ratios, the technique, vanished along with the empire that used it. So scientists did what any good detective does when the paper trail runs cold. They went to the crime scene and started cutting open the evidence. Researchers pulled core samples straight out of ancient Roman harbor walls and put them under a microscope. And that's when they found something weird. Scattered through the concrete were small white mineral chunks. For decades, these were assumed to be a mistake. Sloppy mixing, bad quality control, the kind of flaw you'd expect from ancient laborers rushing a job. Except closer analysis told a different story. Those white chunks weren't a mistake at all. They were a feature. Turns out the Romans were mixing their concrete using something called hot mixing, using actual chunks of quicklime, not the fully slaked lime powder we assumed they used. That reacts violently with water, creating extreme heat during the mixing process. That heat changes everything about how the material forms. And those white lime clasts? They act like a self-healing system. When tiny cracks eventually form in the concrete, and cracks form in literally all concrete over time, rainwater seeps into the crack and reaches one of these lime chunks. That triggers a chemical reaction that produces new material, which fills the crack back in. The wall was healing itself for 2,000 years, while we were staring at it thinking it was defective. Here's where it gets even stranger. And this is the part that actually broke the case wide open. Remember how Roman concrete gets stronger in seawater? That's not despite the ocean. That's because of it. When seawater interacts with volcanic ash in the mix, specifically a type from the region near Naples, it triggers a rare mineral reaction. Over time, this forms an extremely stable mineral called aluminous tobermorite. This mineral is incredibly rare in nature. It usually only forms deep underground, under intense heat and pressure over thousands of years. The Romans accidentally engineered the conditions for the ocean to grow this mineral inside their walls. The seawater wasn't attacking the structure. It was feeding it. Modern concrete is built to resist water. Roman concrete was, whether they fully understood it or not, built to collaborate with it. So you're telling me the enemy was the secret ingredient? So if this formula was this good, how does something like that just disappear for 1,500 years? The honest answer, the Roman Empire did. The knowledge wasn't written down as a clean, universal recipe. It was passed through skilled builders, regional material sourcing, and hands-on experience specific to certain volcanic regions. When the empire collapsed, that entire knowledge chain collapsed with it. The specific volcanic ash sources, the hot mixing techniques, the exact why it works, most of it was never centrally documented in a way that survived. Add thousands of years of lost texts, shifting trade routes, and destroyed cities, and you get exactly what happened. An entire civilization holding a superior formula and losing the instructions before anyone realized how special it actually was. We didn't lose the concrete. We lost the person standing next to it who understood why it worked. Which brings us back to today. Right now, materials scientists are trying to reverse engineer the Roman formula using modern lab equipment the Romans never had access to: electron microscopes, mineral analysis, thermal imaging. The goal isn't nostalgia, it's survival math. Modern concrete production is responsible for a massive share of global carbon emissions. Cement production alone accounts for roughly 8% of the world's CO2 output. If we could build infrastructure that lasts centuries instead of decades and self-heals instead of cracking, we could drastically cut how often the world needs to rebuild. A self-healing seawall doesn't just outlast us. It solves a problem we're still struggling with using a solution that was sitting on the ocean floor the entire time. So here's the wildest part of this whole mystery. The greatest engineering breakthrough of the ancient world wasn't a secret formula hidden in a vault. It was sitting in plain sight, underwater for 2,000 years, being slowly rediscovered one broken chunk at a time. We didn't need to invent something new. We needed to remember something old. And that raises a bigger question worth sitting with. What else did we already figure out once and just forgot? If this blew your mind, subscribe. Because Plot Twist Studio digs up stories exactly like this one every week.